Jacob, whenever I hear President-elect Biden say it's time to turn the page, I want to grab the book myself and start turning every single page. But the one thing I hope no one ever forgets, and I hope that we get to the bottom of this and try to do right by all these families, is this child separation policy. If you could just, I always like to start with where we are. How many of these families are still separated? And what could a new administration with a different belief system do to help them?
Last time you and I talked, Nicole, the number was 666 parents of separated children. The government literally simply cannot find. 20% of those kids were under 5 years old, toddler age, at the time they were taken away from their parents. And President-elect Biden has pledged on day one of his administration, this now falls to Secretary-designate Mayorkas, to create a federal task force to reunite these families. And you know, I think it sounded almost radical to hear the Secretary-designate call the United States a country of welcome. It's probably, you know, the most benign thing you can say about the United States of America. But given what this country has gone through, migrants coming to this country, especially over the course of the last 4 years, it was almost shocking to hear. And, you know, his profile as the first Latino to lead DHS, the first immigrant to lead DHS, all of that is very, I think, reassuring to people in the immigrants' rights community. But at the end of the day, it's going to be policy. And you mentioned it. What are they going to do about reuniting those families? Are they going to allow them to come back to the U.S.? What are they going to do about detention, about deportations, about expulsions? You know, I could talk all day about the different immigration policies that have to be unwound that were put into place by the Trump administration. But, you know, the first indications, according to people who follow this very closely, is that his appointment is a very good sign.
You might not know the answer to this, Jacob, but I know that the Trump administration used all the levers of executive power to be punitive and severe with anyone coming into this country, asylum seekers, migrant workers, immigrant families, children. They used DOJ. I think at some point they siphoned off money from the Pentagon to build some of their facilities at the border. Will they give all of the authority and policy-making power to DHS? Will it be headquartered there, or will there continue to be different pieces of immigration policy and enforcement strewn across the agencies?
I think, you know, I learned this is an advancement when you don't know the answer to say I don't know. And the truth is we don't know. I don't think we have enough detail yet from the incoming administration, frankly, to know. But Mayorkas, don't forget, was the head of not just Deputy Secretary at DHS, but he was also the head of USCIS, the legal immigration system here in the United States. So his depth and breadth of knowledge about the institution itself, the department itself, and it's still a relatively young department, created obviously in the wake of 9/11, you know, would hint at that he knows how to use the levers of this agency to sort of affect all of those things that you were talking about.
David Plouffe, I want your thoughts on what sort of priority this should be. Should this be sort of White House level policymaking? Is this an agency that just needs to function competently and in service of the human beings it interacts with? Where would you put this in terms of a priority item for the incoming White House team?
Well, it's got to be a high priority, Nicole. I mean, this incoming administration, unfortunately, has many high priorities. So one is just think of the difference between Secretary Mayorkas and Wolf and Miller calling the shots. So different personnel, different policies. There's any number of things from an executive action standpoint, from a policy change standpoint, not just at DHS, but at DOJ that could be done, and they'll do all those things. But of course, the big question is there going to be an opportunity to pass comprehensive immigration reform, which would obviously, if not solve this problem, come as close as we've been in decades, but also it would add a point to GDP. It's like a huge booster of the economy. So there's any number of reasons to do this, but I think this has to be high up. The way that Donald Trump has handled these issues is an everlasting stain on our country. And so I think it's got to be a high priority. And I agree with Jacob. I thought hearing the word welcome today, it's such a benign word, but it was shocking because it is such a departure from the way Trump and his administration have approached. I mean, it is basically not just been a "you're not welcome" sign. I mean, they have targeted people. They've tried to exploit them for political purposes. It is so counter to everything we were taught to learn about this country, believe in this country. And really, from George W. Bush to Ronald Reagan, Republican presidents have felt it almost as strongly, maybe as strongly as Democratic presidents. So it will be a return there. But I think it's got to be a high priority. And I think there's huge expectations out there. So one of the things they're going to have to do is do as much as they can in the early days and stages of the administration, but also make sure that advocates and others in the country understand some of these things are going to take a long, long time to get done.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.